After our 7-day, 6-night trip to Bhutan, as we entered the house, my sister posed a question to my parents: "So, how was your trip?" My dad responded, "It wasn't fun." Considering that I had paid the entire cost of the trip, which amounted to Singapore dollars $10,000, approximately $7,500, it felt like money down the drain. For those who have researched traveling to Bhutan, you may be aware that the Bhutanese government has set a mandatory daily expenditure per person ranging from $200 to $250. This requirement explains the overall cost of the trip. But let me start from the beginning. Up until that point, my parents had mainly traveled to China, so I felt it was time for a change. Initially, I considered Tibet as an option, but since I had already been there in 2016 and knew how severe altitude sickness could be, I decided against it. Therefore, I thought Bhutan would be a better choice as it shares a similar cultural heritage with Tibet but at a lower altitude. Since I was covering the expenses, my parents didn't need much persuasion. Thus, in March 2019, we embarked on our trip to Bhutan. In this video, I will guide you through my itinerary for my trip, placing special emphasis on sites that possess a paranormal and spiritual aspect. I encourage you to stay until the end of the video, where I will share my thoughts on the spiritual energies I experienced in Bhutan, including one place in the country where I felt a powerful energy. As someone with a deep interest in spiritual and paranormal phenomena, hence my channel, one of the first topics I raised when we reached Paro, and met our guide, Adhikari, was about Bigfoots in Bhutan. Although it wasn't included in my itinerary, there have been numerous reported sightings of Bigfoot in the Taktsang Wildlife Sanctuary, located in the far eastern region of Bhutan near the Indian border. As a result, the Yetis and their smaller cousins known as Maikhums have been granted protected species status within a 750 square kilometer area called Bigfoot Valley in the Taktsang Wildlife Sanctuary. To put this into perspective, my home country of Singapore spans approximately 719 square kilometers. Essentially, Bhutan has designated an area larger than Singapore solely for the purpose of allowing Yetis to live undisturbed. There are even stories of a centuries-old preserved Maikhum corpse deep within a monastery in Phobjika Valley. This meter-long creature is hollowed out, displaying human-like facial features, fingers, toes, and skin reminiscent of rough cow leather. Alongside the corpse, there is a collection of intricate writings that provide insights into the mysteries surrounding this creature. Unfortunately, the king has issued a decree prohibiting foreigners from entering the inner sanctuary chamber that houses this preserved corpse. While I was excitedly discussing Bigfoot, my guide abruptly interrupted me, stating, "Those Bigfoot creatures don't exist, they are merely fictional." Well, it seemed like we weren't exactly starting off on the right foot, pun intended. On the first day of the trip, we traveled from Paro to Thimphu, the capital city of Bhutan, and visited several notable sites. We started with the Folk Heritage Museum, Felchi Toengtiam, which documents Bhutan's rural past. Next, we visited the Institute for Zorig Chusum, a school that offers a comprehensive 6-year course on Bhutan's 13 traditional arts and crafts. We also explored the National Memorial Chorten, where we witnessed elderly locals engaging in circumambulation. The second day was still spent in Thimphu, and we visited Kwentsel Phadrang, where a colossal Buddha statue overlooks the picturesque Thimphu Valley. We then headed to the Takin Preserve, home to Bhutan's national animal, the takin, which can only be found in this country. Our last stop for the day was Chhimi Lhakhang, a temple housing a central statue of Chenrezig in a unique manifestation with 11 heads. On the third day, we journeyed to Punakha, the former capital of Bhutan from 1637 to 1907. Along the way, we passed through Da Kula Pass, adorned with 108 chortens built by the Queen Mother of Bhutan to honor the king. We stopped for lunch near the divine Madman's monastery, Chhimi Lhakhang. This 15th century monastery was constructed to pay homage to Drukpa Kunli, a Tibetan Buddhist saint known for his unconventional teaching methods that included the use of sexual icons. Legend has it that he encountered a demoness in the Da Kula Pass area, causing infertility among the locals. Drukpa Kunli utilized his spiritual powers to subdue the demoness and transform her into a protective deity. It is also said that he blessed the Queen of Bhutan, who was struggling with infertility, and she subsequently conceived. Consequently, he became renowned as a fertility saint, and his monastery became a pilgrimage site for couples seeking childbirth. At the monastery, couples can receive a blessing from a wooden phallus called a wangchuk, administered by a Buddhist monk. After visiting this fertility shrine, we proceeded to Punakha Dzong, situated on the island formed by the Phochu, male river, and Mochu, female river. My usually unimpressed mother was slightly impressed by this dzong, considered one of the finest in Bhutan. Now, let me take a brief detour to recount an amusing incident during our trip. On the third night, we stayed in Punakha. Prior to our visit, I had heard numerous people mentioning how beautiful Bhutan was, but almost always noting that the food might not be the best. Initially, I was surprised by these comments as I found the food to be satisfactory during the earlier parts of our itinerary in the capital and Thimphu. However, my perspective quickly changed at the Punakha Hotel's buffet dinner. I excitedly loaded up my plate, only to realize with a shock that it was the worst food I had tasted in a while. The rice was undercooked, the noodles were dry and brittle, and everything seemed devoid of seasoning. I jokingly commented to my mother, "Oh my God, this food is even worse than your cooking." My mother, who had always been a terrible cook, yes, I deserve pity, readily agreed. She was astounded that someone could cook worse than her, especially the chef at a hotel. On the next day, we embarked on a side trip to the Gumgate Valley. Our first stop was the Gumgate Gampa, a monastery believed to have been constructed on the site where a demoness Migyur Pema was subdued by Gumgate Tulku. We then proceeded to the Phobjika Valley, which serves as the winter habitat for black-necked cranes. Unfortunately, since we visited during the off-season, we could only observe an injured black-necked crane at the Black-necked Crane Information Center, fittingly given the Buddhist name of Karma. On the fifth day, we drove back to Paro to witness the Paro Tsechu, which was anticipated to be the highlight of our trip. After all, the itinerary was advertised as the 7D6N Paro Festival trip. However, upon our arrival, my father immediately expressed his discontent, questioning why we were there and what could possibly be enjoyable about the event. As if the heavens were aware of my father's thoughts, a gentle drizzle began to fall upon us, soon escalating into a torrential downpour. Everyone hurriedly sought shelter, and our experience at the Paro Tsechu came to an abrupt end. Through my misty eyes, it felt as if the rain was simultaneously washing away the money I had spent on this trip. However, since the Paro Tsechu is supposed to be the highlight of this journey, I feel obliged to introduce it to you, my viewer, even if not to my father. Each year, Bhutan hosts a 10-day religious and cultural festival known as Tsechu. While every district in Bhutan organizes its own Tsechu, the most significant and grand ones take place in Paro and Thimphu. Buddhism was introduced to Bhutan in the 9th century by the esteemed sage Padmasambhava. Rather than delivering sermons, Padmasambhava engaged in rituals and chanted mantras. Among these rituals were special dances aimed at dispelling evil spirits and subjugating local deities. Legend has it that Padmasambhava successfully revived a dying king through his dance, leading to the organization of the first Tsechu. This inaugural festival showcased 8 dances dedicated to the 8 manifestations of Guru Rinpoche, with Padmasambhava himself embodying the ultimate manifestation representing all Buddhas in human form. These original 8 dances, known as Cham dances, have become an integral part of every Tsechu, with 4 to 6 performances occurring each day. They include dances to ward off malevolent spirits, followed by celebratory dances symbolizing their defeat. Additionally, certain dances take place at the cremation grounds during the festival. Masked and costume dancers depict moral tales and significant events from the life of Padmasambhava and other bodhisattvas. It is worth noting that these dances have been prohibited in Tibet, making Bhutan the sole country where you can witness them in their authentic form. A notable tradition during each Tsechu is the unveiling and subsequent removal of a large tapestry called a thenka before sunrise. Merely gazing upon the thenka is believed to cleanse one's soul of all sins. The thenka depicts Guru Rinpoche seated amidst angels and saints. On the penultimate day of our journey, the other highlight was the visit to Taktsang Monastery, also known as Tiger's Nest. The trip had taken a toll on my father, who was unwell and decided to rest in his hotel. Although my mother had always been in good health for her age, even the hike to Tiger's Nest posed a challenge. Consequently, I accompanied her as we rode horses to the viewpoint, where she awaited my return while I trekked for an additional hour to reach the monastery. According to legend, in the 8th century, Padmasambhava flew on the back of a tigress from eastern Bhutan to this very location and meditated in a cave for 3 months. The principal Lhakhang monastery of the present complex was constructed above this cliffside cave and dates back to 1692. Although it suffered severe damage from a fire in 1998, it has since been fully restored to its former glory. Legend also holds that Padmasambhava concealed numerous treasures in caves, lakes, and fields, both in Tibet and Bhutan, to be discovered by chosen, spiritual treasure finders, in the future. One of these treasures is believed to be the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I will delve into the Tibetan Book of the Dead in a future video, so please remember to like and subscribe if you find these topics intriguing. Now, it's time to unveil the one place where I truly felt a strong spiritual energy. To be honest, throughout my journey in Bhutan, I didn't experience much of the spiritual energy that the country is renowned for. It was a peculiar contrast to my previous visit to Tibet, where the spiritual atmosphere was much more profound. I couldn't quite connect with the spiritual energies in Bhutan, which often felt childlike and naive. However, within the inner chamber of the Tiger's Nest, there was a particular spot where I could unmistakably sense a powerful energy emanating from the ground and permeating the surroundings. This was probably the very spot where Padmasambhava had meditated for 3 months over 1,000 years ago. The fact that this energy still lingers in the space could be attributed to the continuous influx of pilgrims, but it also speaks to the profound enlightenment that Padmasambhava must have possessed to leave such an indelible imprint. I will delve into the lives of enlightened masters like Padmasambhava and Milarepa in some of my future videos. Was I disheartened by my parents' response to the trip? Not really. It's just unfortunate that this turned out to be my father's final overseas journey. He passed away on March 18, 2023, earlier this year, and it would have been meaningful if his last trip had brought him genuine enjoyment.